Today, we're jumping into a story from the 19th century that honestly feels more like a spy novel than a piece of history. It's all about how one man, William Cobbett, used some sharp investigation and a bit of agricultural know-how to uncover a secret that was absolutely crushing an entire English industry. And believe me, this isn't just a story about hats. It's a tale of economic espionage, cottage industry, and one very, very important secret.
So, let's set the scene. It's the early 1820s, and the English straw hat industry, which used to be a really big deal, is on its knees. On the left, you've got the English product. It's made from the straw of grain that's already ripened, so it's kind of dull, super brittle, and the weave is flat. But then, on the right, you have the competition, these gorgeous leghorn bonnets from Italy. They were bright, unbelievably durable, and had this beautiful rounded weave. I mean, the difference was just night and day. The English hat makers simply couldn't compete.
You know, William Cobbett himself had the absolute perfect way to describe this. He said using that ripened English straw was like trying to use a dead twig you found on the ground. It's brittle, it's weak, it's lifeless. But the Italian method, using straw that was cut green, that was like using a fresh, living branch cut right from the tree. It's tough, it's flexible, it's got life in it. And that just perfectly captures the huge quality gap they were up against.
Okay, so to really get how Cobbett cracked this case, we're going to follow his journey step by step. First, we'll look at what he called the Leghorn invasion. Then, we'll talk about a very surprising clue that came from all the way across the Atlantic. We'll follow his experiments back in England, uncover his final recipe for golden straw, and then we'll get into his much bigger vision, what he called a cottage economy.
So, things were looking pretty grim. These amazing Italian hats were just flooding the English market. And the local folks who used to make a living from this craft, who fed their families with this work, they were facing real poverty. The Leghorn bonnet might have been high fashion, but for English workers, it was a sign that their way of life was disappearing.
But here's the thing that absolutely baffled Cobbett. England was a farming nation, right? A powerhouse of agriculture. So why in the world were they importing straw? It was just mind-boggling to him that nobody had even bothered to ask, hey, how do the Italians get their straw to be so good? It's like everyone just accepted that it was impossible to make it in England, as if it were sugarcane or something.
So, the big breakthrough? It didn't come from some secret agent sent to Italy. Nope. It came from America, of all places. It arrived in the form of a single, incredibly well-made bonnet sent to a society in London. And that one hat, that was the clue that kicked this whole investigation into high gear.
And you have to see how fast this all happened. In 1821, this bonnet shows up from a Miss Woodhouse in Connecticut, and it's even better than the Italian ones. By June, Cobbett has already sent his son James to America to figure out how she did it. Just a few months later, in September, James sends back this secret. And it's a bombshell. It's not some exotic plant, it's a type of grass that grows all over England. The secret wasn't the plant, it was the process. And by the very next summer, Cobbett himself was already successfully making it back home.
So here it is, the first big reveal. The secret ingredient was Poa pratensis, which is just a fancy name for common meadow grass. Cobbett realized instantly that importing seeds was completely pointless. England was covered in the stuff. It was in every field, every meadow, along every roadside. The raw material had been right there, under their feet the entire time.
So knowing they had the right plant was a huge step. But Cobbett still had one major doubt. Could the notoriously gray, cloudy English climate possibly produce that beautiful bright color of the Italian and American straw? The whole project kind of hinged on whether the English sun was up to the job.
This was the big question that was driving all of his experiments. You know, if that beautiful color was purely a gift from the intense Italian or American sunshine, then the whole project was probably a bust. But if it was about technique, about a process, well then it could be done anywhere. Cobbett was determined to prove that England's sun was good enough.
And here is the beautifully simple process he learned from his son's trip. It's almost like a recipe. You take your freshly cut green grass, you tie it up in little bundles, and then you dunk it in boiling water for about 10 minutes. That's the scalding part. After that, you just lay it out really thinly on a lawn and let the sun do its work, turning it over once a day. In about a week of decent weather, you're done.
And that was the real secret sauce. The sun was definitely important, but the true game changer, the one step that had been missing all along, was the scalding. Dipping the grass in boiling water was the critical first step that prepared it for bleaching. Cobbett himself admitted he had no idea how important this was until his son James came back from Connecticut. This was the missing link.
All right, so Cobbett had proved it could be done with plain old grass.
But he didn't just stop there. He was a true experimenter. He kept tinkering, refining his methods, and searching for the absolute best material to create a product that could truly take on the world.
And this led to his final and probably most important discovery. Yeah, the grass could make a nice hat, but it was often a bit brittle. After a ton of trial and error, he declared that the absolute best material was wheat straw. It bleached better, it had a richer, more uniform golden color, and it was way more flexible and durable. This, he decided, was the stuff that would finally beat the Leghorn imports.
Now you have to get your head around this next part. To grow the wheat so the straw would be as thin and fine as possible, he recommended sowing 20 bushels of seed per acre. To put that in perspective, that's an absolutely enormous amount, something a normal farmer growing wheat for bread would think is insane. But see, he didn't care about the grain. He wanted the straw. You had to crowd the plants to force them to shoot up tall and slender.
So this table basically lays out his perfected system. Sow it super densely. Cut it at the perfect moment, exactly 1 week after the flower drops off, when the straw is at its strongest. Scald it for a good 15 minutes, and then lay it out to bleach, making sure to turn it after the first day to get that beautiful, even golden color. It was a complete, foolproof system.
But here's what you really have to understand about William Cobbett. This was never ever just about making better hats for him. This whole project was right at the heart of his entire social and economic philosophy, a vision he called the Cottage Economy. He saw this little craft as a powerful weapon against what he thought were the evils of the Industrial Revolution.
And let me tell you, he did not mince words. Cobbett saw the new factory system, run by these lords of the loom, as a cruel, dehumanizing machine. He saw his straw plat revival as a way for families in the countryside to fight back, to get their economic freedom back from these savage and bloody wretches of the North, who he believed were tearing apart rural England.
And this just shows you the simple beauty of his idea. What did this new industry actually need? Only things that every little village in England already had in abundance: grass, water, and sun. The only other tool required was the skillful fingers of women and children. It needed no giant machines, no dark factories, no dangerous coal mines, and, this is the big one, no massive investment from rich people.
So, what was his real goal here? It was to restore what he saw as the natural, healthy balance of a farm family. The factories had taken away the traditional work that women and children used to do at home, things like spinning and knitting. This left families totally dependent on a single man's wage. This straw business was a way to bring dignified, clean, and profitable work right back into the cottage, strengthening the family and the whole community.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Cobbett's plan was his answer to the massive technological disruption of his day. Now, as we're facing our own disruptions from automation and AI, it really makes you wonder, what can we learn from a 200-year-old plan for an economy that's local, human-powered, and rooted in community? It's a question that feels just as important today as it was back then.